Hey everybody, Julie here with Just Plain Fun, and today I'm going to show you how I made this block. And when you get the instructions for this block, you're not going to see this border in the instructions. Those I had to add on because I made a mistake and the block didn't come out as big as I wanted it to be, so I chopped it down to 9.5 and added the borders. I had to do it to both sides. This is a double-sided quilt as you piece block. And the reason why you see the borders, because I'm only making one, not making another one, but the instructions, just remember, are only the zigzag part without the border around it. So let's get started, and I'll show you how I did it. To get the block started, we're going to need the instructions, and I've blocked this out because these sizes are underneath. But what you're going to do is, after you cut these triangles, it's going to instruct you to cut them in, cut each strip into 2 triangles. You're going to be working with 2.5-inch strips, and you're going to make them so long, and then you're going to cut them into triangles. But these triangles are really long. So what you're going to do is you're going to cut the triangles down to 10.5 inches long and keeping them at 2.5 inches wide. This will make it easier for you to sew them together, so that way there is no question how to line up your strips. And I've got my fabrics all ready to go, except one strip is not yet cut. If you take a look up here, this one's not ready to be used, but I have them all cut, and I'm going to go ahead and cut this one to show you what I mean. Of course, you probably already know what I mean. All right, you're going to take both of your strips, you're going to lay it down, just line it up straight on your cutting mat. Don't use the grid as a measuring guide. Use your ruler for that. And I have a ruler here that makes it really easy for me to cut this down, because I can go from here to here. And I've ordered a new one, a new 3-inch by 18-inch, because this one has a lip on it, and it's not exactly flat on my table, but I can use it anyway for this. And this one I've had for like 20 years. So, all right, so I'm going to go to 10.5. In fact, it's not exactly correct here. There we go. Line it up. And on this 3-inch ruler, I'm able to line it up on this edge and on this edge and on this edge down here. So that's what I'm going to do, 10.5 inches. I'm going to line it right up. And this narrow edge should be 1/2 inch if you've cut these correctly. So I'm just going to cut that off and get rid of that. So now this one is ready to be used. Bring this over. And I'm going to show you how I do the first 2 pieces, and then the rest of them, the way I'm going to do it this video is you're just going to see them finished and being added one by one by one. You're actually not going to see me actually do it. You'll just see it grow. That should keep the video short, but I'll show you how I do this with these 2 pieces, because I'm also going to quilt them, and the quilt lines will be along the seam lines 1/2 inch apart. So let me get started. We'll start here, pull this away, and I'm here. Grab my little mat. I do have one of those double-sided rotary mat and ironing board, but I found that if my iron gets too hot, it'll warp the bottom of it. So that's why I made this. Okay. Now I didn't bother cutting the batting. I just felt since I'm going to be trimming it up later, it wasn't necessary. But I'm going to go ahead and layer these 2 pieces like I normally would. Here is my glue stick. And I have my liquid glue. So the glue stick, what this is, if you haven't seen any of my previous videos, this is water-soluble glue. It's washable glue. And I would not use the purple stuff. Even though it does wash out in the wash, when you're ironing it, after the color disappears and you heat it up, the color comes back. So I don't know if there'll be, you know, I washed a stocking made with the colored purple stuff, and the color came back while I was making it, but once it was washed, it did not come out of the dryer purple. So it washes out completely, but still it bugs me. So I use the white stuff, and this is washable. It works really, really good. The stuff in here is Elmer's school glue. This is what I use for all of my piecing, just about all of it. I also use the Acorn glue precision piecing glue, which really, really, really works very well. But this is less expensive, so I'm going to use that. All right. So what I do here is you got to pay attention to your orientation, because you've got a 90-degree angle here. Yeah, that's 90 degrees. And the other one, you know, you've got to make sure that you have this oriented correctly. I've made this mistake a few times, because you're going to layer these 3 pieces together. And you're going to start off with glue stick. And I bought a box of these, 60 of these glue sticks, so I have them for a while. It might take 30, maybe 20 or 30 of these glue sticks for the whole quilt. And it was a lot less expensive than buying the spray cans. I don't like the spray cans. I have asthma, so that's why I don't buy them. Okay, then you're going to lay down your batting directly on it. And yeah, you can go ahead and trim at this point if you like. For this one, simple enough. All right, then you're going to turn it over. Make sure it's layered correctly. Just plugged in my iron. So while I wait for that to heat up, I'm going to prepare the other side. I put somewhat of a liberal amount, because the glue is an important part of this whole process. It prevents you from having to use your walking foot. And also when you stitch on it, when you quilt on it, your fabric will not pucker or crease, which is a good thing. So my iron is heated up, and now I can press it in place. And you're going to do this to both sides. Okay, flip it over. Do the other side. And then the next step on this is you want to orient your piece the way it's supposed to be in the block, especially because this is a triangle, and you want to make sure that you have it correct, because the next piece goes on. And I'm going to bring it closer to me because it's easier to reach. And this one is going to be laid on top of this, just like this. And you want to make sure that you have the little 1/4 inch thingy here, the 1/4 inch seam. Make sure it's lined up, because it is going to stick out a little bit. So once you've established how you're going to do that, go ahead and put a dot of glue down the whole edge. And I put a space, you know, it doesn't matter how far apart, but, you know, pretty much no more than, a couple inches apart. You know, use your judgment. And this glue really, really works. The Elmer's school glue is my favorite for this type of technique. And I have tried using the dollar store type of glue, the children's school glue. It doesn't stick as well. This one is really, really good. It's the only one I'll use for this method. But that acorn glue is really good, but I'll use that for other type of piecing, you know, without the batting. I don't know why. I just do. Probably, I don't know. I really don't know why. Okay, and then I'm going to flip this over. All right. Establish your 90-degree angle. Oh dear. Basically what you're trying to do is put together your 2.5-inch strip. So this looks correct. So you've got a rectangle here. So you're going to do the same thing. And to make it easier, you can line the first, well, you're going to line the fabrics up together. This glue again. And you're going to be stitching 1/4-inch seam on, paying attention to the fabric, not the batting. So you're going to line this up to the fabric that's below it. Because it's the fabrics that you're stitching together through the batting. And it looks like my cuts were not exactly on, exactly on, because I stacked them and I cut them. I was getting tired last night and I just decided, oh, let's just stack them and cut them. So what I'm going to do here, as soon as I get this pressed in place or set, I'm going to take it to the machine, going to do my 1/4-inch seam allowance, and then the way I attach this to this is I use a zigzag stitch all the way down the edge. And because this one actually has to go over here, and again, you're trying to make a rectangle. Imagine this as your rectangle, and it makes a rectangle. So you've got it oriented correctly. So you do the 1/4-inch seam, and you do a zigzag stitch. I always use a 3.0 stitch length on the piecing, and on the zigzag stitch, the stitch length is 4.0, and the width, the width of the stitches is 6.0. If your machine can't go any wider than that, just take it as wide as you can. Mine can go wider, but I don't need it to be wider. 6 is plenty. All right, 5 works also. So I'll be right back. All right, the pieces are stitched together. The next step is to go ahead and flip this up. And you want to do a slight tug because we used glue, and some of the glue could have ended up outside of the seam allowance, and which I know it did because I could feel some of it pop a little bit. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take your glue stick this time, just like we did with the initial piece here. You're going to glue this to the batting. And if you notice, I left this batting long. And that was actually a good thing because I actually went a little bit further. When you stitch these together, you're going to lose 1/4 inch on your overall piece. So, and the batting, since it was cut exactly the same size as the strips, just a little longer, it gives you plenty of batting underneath your fabric. If you see what I mean right here. So, and it's important with this method that you trim off your batting, especially for this block. You trim off your batting after every addition of your patches. So that way it'll be easier to line them up when you add more. So, I'm going to flip this over, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and tug on this a little bit. Be gentle so you don't distort your fabric. Okay, and then you're going to put your glue on this one. Now, if we sewed it right, that should have been 1/4 inch, which it looks to be about right. So this should be a 2.5 inch by 10 inch block so far. And again, we're going to trim it before I continue. And one thing I'm going to do at this point, before I even trim off the batting, I'm going to go ahead and do my first quilting. I didn't bother doing it with this first one because it really wasn't necessary. I do want the stitching lines to be going with the seam line on all of them. So I'm going to go ahead and quilt that. The quilting lines, this is straight line quilting, 1/2 inch apart. And I have a cool feature on my sewing machine where I could move my needle all the way to the right to 7.0 and have my setting be as if it was going to be printing down the center, but I was able to move the needle. So that way I get a 1/2 inch from the edge, because I'm concentrating on putting this edge of the this edge of the foot on my stitch here, and it will be a 1/2 inch away. So I will be back. All right, so that has been all stitched, top stitched, and I did stay stitching along these two edges, which just makes it easier to piece. And then, so the next step here is to cut off this batting. I'm not going to bother cutting off the batting on the ends. It's just not necessary at this point. So I'll go ahead and pull this over here, line this up. And again, I don't have my weight, but I'll bring that back over here in a few minutes. Just helps me prevent from hurting my hands. And it helps keep the ruler from slipping. All right, so that takes care of that. So the next step is to go ahead and put the rest of the pieces on. And like I said before, that's basically how you do it. You're going to be repeating the steps over and over and over again. And since it's so repetitive, you're just going to watch this grow. So let me pull up my pieces here. And we'll get going. On second thought, I think I'm just going to fast forward through this piece, and then you're going to see it grow. Now that it's done, I do know that this is not actually more than 10.5 by 10.5. So I'm going to compensate for that by trimming it up to 9.5 by 9.5 and put a border around it before I add it into the quilt. So what I'm going to go ahead and do, I'm going to grab my rotating cutting mat and I'm going to cut it down to 9.5 by 9.5. Here is my 9.5 inch ruler, and basically all I'm going to do is I'm going to eyeball it and center it the best I can. And I am going to go ahead and show you the finished block after I get the new border around it. And if you haven't noticed, I'm actually using the very same set of 2.5 inch strips that I used on the very first few blocks, if you've been following me. And this is how I'm going to take care of all of the blocks that don't quite meet my size of 10.5. I'll just go ahead and put a 1 inch border around the outside edge. They won't be mitered. It'll be I'll make them long on one side, you know, like a courthouse steps type of construction. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this, and I don't even know if I'm centered or not. It's just it's very disappointing that I didn't actually get to my 10.5. But this one was a difficult block to do. And I think I'm where I want to be. So I'm just going to go ahead and do it. Yikes. And yes, I'm losing points. But you know what? I don't really care about that. I'm going to go get my... I'll be right back. Okay, here's my rotary cutter, and I'm just going to go ahead and put my weight on it. This helps hold it in place, and I'm standing up so I can actually do this at a better angle. And boy, I really hate doing this, but I don't see how I have a choice. So my next step is to go ahead and add a border. The great thing about these rotating cutting mats, you can see it. I don't have to move the ruler, just the mat. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, go add a border, and I'll be right back. Alright, so I have finished the block. I added the borders, something I wasn't really actually planning to do. That's why the instructions do not include the border. But let me go ahead and trim this up. In fact, the pictures on the instructions do not include the borders. I'm only doing this and showing it to you to show you what you can do if you run into this problem. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and take a moment to line this up, and then I'll cut it. That's about as close as I'm going to be able to get it. So I'm going to go ahead and put my weight on it, and I'm going to go ahead and stand up and cut this down. And then I'll do my stay stitching around the outside edge. Basically, I'm 3/4 of an inch away from the seam where I stitched the strips to the block after trimming it down to 9.5. And I'm only making one of these blocks. That's why you're not going to see the actual, that's why you see the actual strips on the outside, because I'm only making one. Okay, so this is done, except for the stay stitching around the outer perimeter. I like the way it turned out. It's pretty. And that's that. Okay, it's been stay stitched. and the block is done, ready to be added to the other blocks. Or once I'm done getting all the blocks together, I'll put them together in a quilt. This is a mystery quilt. Don't know what it's going to look like when it's done. And I've got 15 to go after this one. The next block I make will be free, but this one is not. You can get it at the website at jpfun.com, and you can register for a free points account, get 20,000 points for watching this video. Hopefully you caught that secret code that was earlier in the video, and you take that secret code over to jpfun.com, sign into the members area or the claim points page, and go ahead and claim points for getting, for watching this video. And you can redeem those points to get this pattern. And I pretty much gave away all the measurements. The strip around the outside perimeter is very simple. What I did is I took the strips that I used for these, cut them in half and added them, and the same with the batting strips. I just added them the same exact way. So until next time, I want to thank you for watching, and if you liked the fast forward section and the stop action section of the video, please leave me a comment. Tell me what you want. Tell me if you like it. Tell me if you don't like it. I'm making these videos because I want to show you a new method of making quilts. I'm not looking to replace how quilts are made. I'm just adding to what's already out there. What's out there is incredible and amazing. But I've been wanting to do this pretty much since I was a child. And I started sewing by hand in 1973, sewing by machine in 1978. So I've been at it quite a while. I took 20 years off, but that I didn't lose anything in my knowledge. Did clothing, did quilts, did all sorts of stuff. So until next time, thank you and have a great day. Goodbye.